Hello everyone and welcome to yet another webinar by Royal Cyber. Our topic for today is Saudi Arabia's personal data protection law, regulation and compliance. Uh, my name is Pratik Nilkund and I lead the data governance practice at Royal Cyber, and I will be your speaker and host for today. Um, Now before we start, I want to talk about a little bit about Royal Cyber and today's agenda. We are an IT consulting and digital transformation company, and since 2002, we have successfully completed over 1,500 projects for 600 plus happy clients. We have gained significant recognition from our customers and partners worldwide over the years, including some Fortune 500 companies, for providing best-in-class services and solutions across multiple domains. We are a team of 1,000 skilled resources, 1,200 now actually, globally distributed through various delivery centers across the globe. We are headquartered in the United States with offices in multiple countries across the globe, through which Royal Cyber provides reliable and high-performing governance, commerce, cloud, analytics, mobile, and middleware solutions and services. Our history and evolution is something that fascinates me every now and then. We started uh, pretty early, and we started with a strong association with IBM, and thereafter we uh, added multiple offices around the globe, got a lot of awards, over the next few years, and attained many different certifications like the ISO now 9001 2015 certification, widely regarded as one of the best cloud consulting companies, and have been also awarded best and brightest companies to work for in the nation last year, um, as well as Chicago's best and brightest companies to work for. So with this, let us look at how the agenda looks like for today's webinar. We will start with an overview of PDPL, after which we will dive a little deeper into the specifics or the key aspects, basically the what's of PDPL. We will then go over the implementation checklist, which is really the highlight of the webinar, and talks about the how piece, the operationalizing of PDPL, or getting compliant, sorry, with PDPL. We will then sum up the webinar by sharing some of our learnings during our CCPA and GDPR implementations, as well as by answering some of the questions we received today during the webinar. All right, so let's get started. Just a little disclaimer, before we dive into the subject. We, Royal Cyber, are not lawyers and are not offering legal advice on any questions pertaining to GDPR, CCPA, PDPL, or any other regulations. We are just, operationalizing specialists or implementation specialists, and if you have any questions around the legal aspects of GDPR, CCPA, PDPL, or any other regulations for that matter, please consult your own privacy experts and legal counsel. We help in, uh, as we said, operationalizing regulations, leveraging some good partnerships we have had with leading tools like OneTrust, Big ID, Colibra, as well as Informatica. All right, so this is just an overview of PDPL. Um, Now, the PDPL is designed to protect personal data, that is, any information in whatever form through which a person may be directly or indirectly identified. Some examples of personal data may be individual's name, identification number, addresses and contact numbers, photographs, and video recordings of the person. As you can see under the scope section, the law is applicable to the processing of personal data by companies or public entities that takes place in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, relates to the personal data of residents of the kingdom by companies located outside the kingdom. So it's a pretty broad scope here. And a point to note as well that PDPL does not apply to the processing of personal data for personal and family use. So that's an exemption there. Um, the PDPL was again published in the official gazette on 24th September 2021, and the effective date is 23rd March 2022, which, as we speak, is less than 5 months from now. And of course, if you hover over to the fines section, you will see that the fines for non-compliance are pretty heavy and ranging to up to 5 million, and broadly split into three categories, which is violations of sensitive data transfers, which may include imprisonment for up to 2 years, or and/or a fine not exceeding Saudi Arabian riyals 3 million. Violations of the data transfer is the second category. Um, may not be sensitive in this case, but it still leads to an imprisonment for up to 1 year and/or a fine not exceeding Saudi Arabian riyal 1 million. Violations of other provisions of the PDPL, um, penalties are limited to a warning notice or a fine not exceeding Saudi Arabian riyal 5 million. So it goes from no, just a warning notice to a really pretty hefty fine of Saudi Arabian riyal, less than Saudi Arabian riyal 5 million. So this is just an overview, but uh, let's go through some of the key aspects of this law. The first one is obviously the data subject rights, um, very kind of similar to uh, GDPR, and probably more rights given than granted than the CCPA or the California Consumer Privacy Act. Here, individuals will have the right to be informed of personal data processing and the legal basis of these processing. They will also have, this is the second one, which is the right to access their personal data, the right to correct or update their personal data, as well as the right to request destruction if uh, data is no longer needed. Data subjects also have the ability to file complaints relating to the application of the PDPL with the regulatory authority. The second aspect, or the second key aspect rather, is the purpose limitation and data minimization. Here, organizations are required to make clear the purpose for which personal data is collected and used. Personal data should also be relevant, and controllers should limit collection to the minimum amount required to achieve the intended purpose. So that's a data minimization principle. Consent. is the next important key aspect, where the data subjects may withdraw their consent to the processing of personal data at any time, and consent must not be a prerequisite for the controller to offer a service or benefit. So consent is again a very important key aspect. Privacy policy, again, controllers are required to implement a privacy policy and make it available to data subjects prior to the collection of their personal data. The PDPL sets out the minimum information that should be included in the privacy policy, including when personal data is collected directly from the data subject. So generally, we have seen that when it comes to CCPA or GDPR, this is included in the privacy policy section of the website, where you make that disclosure of the personal data, what data categories of personal data, the purposes for which they're using personal data, and all of that other critical disclosures that need to be made. Controller obligations are where controllers will be obliged to ensure the accuracy, completeness, and relevancy of personal data before passing it, to maintain a record of processing for a period that will be prescribed by the executive regulations, and to ensure that staff are suitably trained in the PDPL and data protection principles. So this is a critical controller obligation to ensure the accuracy, completeness, and relevancy of personal data before processing it, to maintain a record of processing for a period. So the last one would be impact assessments, and here controllers are required to evaluate the impact of processing personal data, and if personal data is no longer needed to achieve the intended purpose, the controller should stop the collection of such data. So this is again a very important key aspect, impact assessments, and there may be a couple more uh, key aspects, but at when we are talking about the most important ones, we felt this is a very fine consolidated list of key aspects. Now that we have a general understanding of key aspects, let us look at um, an implementation checklist, which would be kind of like the best practices uh, for PDPL. So let us go through them one by one, and during covering, this is actually the highlight of the webinar, the implementation checklist, and this is uh, where we really nail it in terms of operationalizing or making an organization compliant. During as we walk through the checklist items, I'll make sure to demo a few important ones, so we get a good idea by a visual representation of how this can be carried out. All right, so let's look at the first one, which is awareness training. It involves teaching people why they should care about protecting privacy. If people don't care, they won't pay attention and won't change their behavior. uh, People need to understand why privacy matters and its impact. So typically we have seen that privacy training should address the following issues, like why should people care about privacy, why is privacy valued by the organization, what are the consequences of failures to protect privacy to customers, clients, and colleagues? What are the consequences to the organization? What are the consequences to the individuals involved in the failure? Training curriculum may include topics. Now, what I spoke about was the key issues, but if you go down a little lower or more granular, you will see that You'll have topics like importance of data protection, what is personal data, collecting personal data, processing personal data, individual rights, sharing of personal data, data security and data incidents, as well as accountability or ownership. So these are the topics that uh, will need to be trained. And this is where the people part is actually covered. The second one, and this directly talks to the key aspect, data subject rights. Here, basically, as individuals become more aware of their privacy rights, organizations need to be prepared to respond quickly. So we've seen that teams that employ automated workflows to verify identity, discover and action the requester's data, and communicate securely are better equipped to respond to the DSARs or the data subject access requests. Here, what happens is we generally set up procedures for receiving consumer requests, establish mechanisms to verify consumer identities, fulfill requests, as well as track history of requests. So these are all the things that are covered here. Now let me just quickly demo this piece, to get an idea of the requests. I'm just going to go back to our browser, and this is, as I mentioned earlier during our webinar, that uh, OneTrust is a tool that we work with actively, uh, strong partners. And here, if we look at the data subject requests, um, we can see a dashboard which says that okay, there are 16 requests that are received. The way they typically send out this request is uh, by going to the web forms, which is deployed on the company's website. So if we look at a, let's look at a trial web form. It has different fields like, I'm submitting this information on behalf of myself or my household. What are the rights I want to exercise to this web form now. um, if I want, it can be made mandatory or optional, right? And the form fields are pretty customizable. The styling is customizable. There's an opportunity to add attachments or descriptions as necessary. And um, the next part is, if they click on access my information, then what are the rules that it has to go through, what is the sequence that it has to go through, right? So basically, if a data subject comes in and chooses access my information, then it triggers a particular workflow, the access workflow, which is something that we deploy in the workflow section, and it takes care of the right to access, right. And if you look at the request, this is something it looks. So this is a some of the requests that we have floated, and you can see that there are different tasks here. So it goes through different tasks, and by means of the tasks, there is collaboration between different players of the privacy team or the data team combined, where they identify if the request is genuine or not. They fulfill the request, notify the customer that it has been fulfilled, and then it's completed. And we can see, if you go back to the requests page, we can see that it is submitted by whom, what are the days left for processing it. So this was something that I had um, set a long time ago. So here you see minus 422 uh, days, which is not a realistic number here. You can also see the data subject type, and there's filter by which you can further refine these requests. So if I just say, just show me the ones where the country is equal to, say, United States. Let's see. Yeah. And if I hit save and apply, then there are no items to display. But if I just go in and select United States now, oh, I cannot see for United States as well. But if I just uh, go here, clear the filter and apply now, I can see that these are the requests. If I click on one uh, and look at other statistics, like what is this workflow about, it's a delete workflow. The date opened is this. We can see a lot of uh, metadata on that particular request, and then I can also comment uh, saying that, hey, I have completed my task, uh, completed my task, and I can send it to my internal team. When I'm sending, uh, I can also I can also notify the consumer of these actions by selecting public and selecting from a list of templates, like this is LGPD Brazil, but if we just say CCPA, for example, and we say, okay, thank you for contacting us, and unfortunately your request could not be processed based on the information you provided. uh, you know if there is anything else that we can help you with, or if you believe this was a mistake, please let us know. So it can be again customized, these templates. If we go here, there is a response template section. So we can have multiple templates here, like confirm, deletion. A lot of them can be repurposed as well, but if you want to make slight modification or heavy modifications, um, we can there is an opportunity to do so. So this is just at a very high level, how data subject access requests or can be taken care of, having firstly a web form on the website, and then workflows to cater to those web forms, and then response templates to have kind of an easy communication of or notifying a particular consumer, right? So all of that is possible. Now let me go back. As I said, I'll just go, be covering some of the checklist items and demo it a little bit, so that we get a general idea of what it is, as well as a visual representation. So let me go back to our uh, slides. Look at uh, the third one, which is uh, record keeping. Again, here you can see how, or you can document rather, how data will be used. This is an example of a process called new product launch campaign, and you can see that it consumes data set, customer product sales data. Again, something which is, by the look of the name of it, it sounds like it has heavy uh, personal identifiers involved here, PII data involved in this particular data set. And it has uh, you know probably data that pertains to the behavioral information of a customer, the contact information of customers, the online activity, as well as the social media information. So typically it helps to identify where the impacted data set came from, as well as the data categories that are impacted by this processing activity. So whenever you launch a particular process, it helps to keep record of all these different uh, processes, as well as the customer data touch points here. You can also have ownerships. You can see John Fisher is a business steward, and he's the one who is kind of responsible for this particular business process, which is new product launch campaign. And this is where you can have certain amount of the people aspect, as well as the operational aspect of workflows and everything connected or linked to this particular processes as well. So again, let me just now this is I mean, you must be wondering, is it the same tool OneTrust? Well, it's not. It's a tool called Collabra that we have partnered with, and we work um, actively for with a lot of customers on Collabra implementation for data governance, data privacy, data quality as well. So let me just quickly demo this and see how it looks like on the tool. So here, if I go to Colibra, this is I mean, it's a very blank slate at this moment. These dashboards can be customized, but if we look at, say, a steward dashboard, you can see open tasks, different assets. um, you can have it customized for different personas, like privacy persona, your cybersecurity personas. You can do it for a group, or you can do it for an individual, or you can have a um, bifurcation by departments like finance and marketing and all of that. And they typically um, mirror the the hierarchy, or the subunits and units and divisions and hierarchies within an organization. So this is just the dashboard. But now, if I were to search for new product launch campaign, right, I can quickly go to the diagram for it and see that uh, this process here, new product launch campaign, is it consumes data set, customer, product, sales data. uh, the system is CRM cloud. We can see on the right hand side, as we click on uh, these different boxes. If I click on the red box of the system, I can see the metadata information of the system. If I click on the yellow box, it typically shows me the sales data, right? The custom product sales data set, which and the different data elements involved here. So also the sensitivity of it looks like it's highly restricted. I can see it complies to uh, to a governance asset, end date contract, who's the business steward. I can see a lot of this metadata information, and I can also explore this to have things represented uh, you know uh, more clearly on the diagram, which shows. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, it shows uh, the risk it can have. The this particular, now it's revolving around the data set. It shows what data elements does it contain, right? And if I look at the element itself, I can see what is the column position. These all have been ingested from a particular database, right, which has given me all the statistics of this particular data element. I can also see many other information, like it links to, it has information in this data set basically has information around California customers, right? So all of this can be built, uh, and here it's just an example of business process activity with recipient. But if you want to view it from a different lens, then that is possible as well. Basically, to have different um optics around the same uh, process, how it relates to the context of uh, processing activity or data flow or catalog lineage. A lot of possibilities in this case. So one of my favorite tools, because there is so much to it, talks about documenting your or cataloging your policies, processes, systems, data assets, very good ingestion capabilities where you can get the metadata from different systems, show dependencies between your data sets and reports, which report is using which data elements. A lot of good permutations and combinations that can be seen here. Also the people aspect of it, if we go to settings and If we look at the different users, we can also see a lot of information around you know around the people part of it as well. So very good stuff, very uh, uh, powerful kind of a tool, and uh, we will be covering this a little more as we go ahead in this webinar. But this is what it is at a very high level. Let us go to the next slide here. Quick share. All right. Okay. Okay. So the next item here is sensitive data discovery and classification. Again, this is more of a okay, you have data, but do you know what categories of data is restricted or public or private? Uh, so you can create kind of a data map for the restricted data, understand what data entities, attribute, and systems are linked to restricted data. uh, you know, you may be wondering, how does it all correlate to PDPL? Well, it does, because if you remember the first slide, there is a fine of about 3 million Saudi Arabian riyals, around that range, if the sensitive data is breached, right, or disclosed. Um, um, right? So in that case, we need to understand where firstly is our sensitive data located, and it needs to be tagged well as sensitive or not sensitive, public, private, right? All of that categorization needs to be done. So similarly, this is again kind of like a Colibra um implementation for us, but we this is a more appropriate view of it. If you look at a policy called data classification policy, which dictates that the classification of data be based on level of sensitivity, and you know how the ones based on its impact it can have if the data is to be disclosed, altered, or destroyed without authorization. It has certain standards like restricted public and private data. An example of a data category is payment card information for restricted data. What is payment card information? Further broken down, payment card information can have certain logical data attributes like credit card number, credit card expiration date, and cardholder name, which links to a business object customer. And it if you look at it in a database, you will have column names like CRE underscore card number, or cust underscore name, or credit card underscore expiry date, and all of that produced by a system Dynamics AX 2012, for example. Just a traceability or a lineage like this can be represented on Colibra. Again, going back to the tool, just looking at let's look at data classification policy, right? Data classification policy. What is the description for it? Right. Um, if I scroll down a little, I can see that it has private data linked to it, public data, as well as restricted data. So these are the three classifications. Click on restricted data, I can see, if I look at the diagram for it, I can see a pretty solid diagram here, which says that okay, it's linked to entity customer, and uh, this is this is present, and this information is present in SQL Server, and uh, in this is the particular table, and this is the particular column, right, at the system level. System is CRM cloud, and all of this information I can further explore it and see that okay, restricted data, the other examples are customer email address, first name, last name, uh, birth date, name, all of this information. If I further broaden uh, restricted data, I can see the different categories of restricted data, right, like crime and fraud data. These are all, um, you know we're talking about payment card information here. If I just do a plus here, I can see that okay, it has the model financial stock exchange data model has this as one of the attributes, credit card expiration date. So a lot of good permutation and combinations again, as we can see, um, and a lot of visualization capabilities as well with leveraging the tool Colibra. Okay, let's go back to uh, the presentation. The next item on the list is the data mapping exercise, where you can gain a high level view of customer data, see how customer data is being used today, as well as understand the applicable legal basis for using this data. Again, you're talking about, okay, what are my um, if you look at customer data, how is it flowing across my organization? What is the system that's collecting it? What is the where is it stored, and what are the possible destinations of it? And then how is it archived or destroyed or not? Is the first question. If yes, what how is it done? So all of that can be seen here. Yeah, again, very simple, very straightforward, but this screenshot is again a more one trust kind of a exercise. I'm just going to go to home, and going to look at data mapping, which is again one of the modules here. uh, Quickly look at let's say processing activities. There would be a process that uh, called store and product reviews. We click on it, we can see the details of it, and we can see a quick lineage for it as well. And if we expand it, just, yeah, I can see that okay, it's been passed through it's data subject customer. It this particular basically what this means is this process uses customer information, and this customer information is sourced from Bazaar Voice, stored in Salesforce CRM, and then finally it's moved to Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So a lot of this lineage kind of information, if you look at details, you get a more more descriptive kind of metadata information, like the description for it, the purpose of processing it, the legal basis of processing, the data subjects volume, right, the region of the data subjects, all of this information. Again, when we are doing that inventory map, it is very necessary to not just look at processing activities, but also grab metadata around different assets like Bazaar Voice, what it is, what's the description for it, what's the utility, what does it mean to the organization basically, what are the linked data elements to this particular system, what PII information is collected here. Also mapping your vendor or your third party, very important, because in a lot of cases, you will be sharing data with them, and you want to make sure that we are keeping a constant watch on how the vendor is um, kind of responsible about the customer data that we pass on to that particular vendor, or any information that we pass on to this vendor basically. Right, so yeah, so this is the the mapping part of it. Right, let us quickly have a recap of this. Right, we saw how the customer data very important to have this exercise, because even if you are processing um, um, a data subject request, right, you want to understand where all is my customer data located, and what are the processes that are using it or not, right? So all of that. The sixth item on the checklist is breach response process, where as you can see on the dashboard, three-step process: intake and investigate, assess and notify, and improve. Basically gather all the key metrics and context needed to understand the impact of an incident. Assessments to gather all of the necessary information to prepare an appropriate response strategy, as well as optimize your instant response program with KPI tracking. Right here, you can see, if you just look at the pretty self explanatory in itself, the screenshot, where If you look at the dashboard itself, you can see that there are 13 open incidents. The incident by type are as follows. um, what are the different stages? These 13 incidents are bifurcated in these different stages. So one incident may be in one stage, the second one will be on a different stage probably. Total incidents were 32, but out of which around 32, minus 13 were the ones which were closed, right? So um, also, if you look at the incidents by source and the incidents by organization, these dashboards again can be customized. It's a one trust screenshot, kind of helps get that high level kind of a view, and as well as you can deep dive into each of these incidents as well. uh, Finally, we let us look at some of the lessons learned. Having gone through the implementation checklist, let me just quickly recap the the checklist section here, because this is very important. We looked at awareness training and how it's important to train people about um, the importance of privacy and the impact it has on an organization. We looked at request fulfillment workflows. It basically talks about the rights of data subjects, and how a company or an organization wants to have to ensure that any task, there are workflows that are set up, sometimes manual, sometimes automated, in order to process the rights of these customers. We looked at having a web form. We looked at having looked at a few workflows of how it was set up on OneTrust, and how can this request be tracked, and how can this request be fulfilled by collaboration between the different players of the privacy and the data team. We also looked at an implementation checklist, item 3 for record keeping, where we looked at a particular process and understood how it's important to understand the data set linked to that process, and as well as the categories of PII, or customer data categories that are linked to that particular process. Looked at you have your data, but you want to have a place where you want to classify that data into restricted, public, private, based on a classification policy. um, I mean, you can have a different naming convention for it, but you want to know where is my sensitive data, and what all systems it's linked to. We also looked at, we kind of took an example of payment card information and looked at the lineage for it on tool Colibra, of how does it look all the way from a particular technology asset or system to a policy, and all the intermediaries between them, um, can be seen here. We looked at a data mapping exercise for customer data, gaining that high level of high level view of customer data. Very important, to understand how customer data is being used in your organization today. What are the different system touch points for your customer data, and how is it being stored, how is it being what are the different destinations for it, and finally how is it being archived or destroyed. uh, this is something that we looked at, at the end, when we talk about incidents, incident management or breach response processes, where um, there are three important steps, and what are the different workflows that um, can be created around breach responses in your tool OneTrust. So having gone through all of it, it's time now to uh, just share some of our experiences, of having dealt with some of CCPA as well as GDPR implementations. The first lesson that we learned is the importance of um, having leadership and multidisciplinary collaboration, very very essential to a successful implementation. Um, Determining kind of the ownership within the organization and acquiring resources from multiple groups within the organization to successfully implement the PDPL will be a significant effort. And most successful compliance efforts, as we have seen, are the product of a strong leader, um, appropriately, situated within the organization. This person should have a clear mandate from the executive suite in order to avoid being perceived solely as a compliance project or an IT project or a legal functionary, without, it's kind of like it's all of them and not just one, because it's so wide and it's all encompassing. Uh, the second lesson we learned that budgeting uh, is very important. Budgeting appropriate funds as soon as possible. Budgeting for the extensive efforts required to comply with GDPR and CCPA was a bit of a hot potato for many companies. Um, the impact of this compliance effort within organizations was wide ranging. There it reminds me of a very good quote that I had uh, seen on Google Images, which said, "If you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance." So very important quote to sum that point up, which talks about having your budget and in those kind of discussions in place as you delve into making your organization PDPL compliant. Can't stress the importance of the third point enough, because it's very very essential to have a good data inventory and map, to map your compliance efforts. Very very important, because although painful and very time consuming to generate, a well crafted data inventory can serve multiple purposes. It provides the initial foundation, understanding for, on which the compliance effort is managed, but can also be used to demonstrate and track compliance on an ongoing basis. Um, the fourth lesson, and although there were many lessons, we have just picked the top four here. So this is the fourth one, but last but not the least in any way, um, vendor management, very important, because you're not just companies are no longer just keeping their data with them, but they are it's very important to pass it to your vendors as well. And given the challenges and dependencies, it is crucial to allot sufficient time in the compliance effort to access to assess rather your third party relationships, develop a compliance approach for both new and existing third party relationships, as well as implement that approach for existing relationships. Very very important. Again, OneTrust has a very good vendor management module that kind of helps with this exercise. And everything that we talked about today um, can be served um, by a combination of OneTrust and Collabra. But again, depends what the roadmap is. Every organization is different. Every um, you know team is different. So kind of having that clear strategy and broken down into tasks is very very important. Although we are just a few months out here, less than 5 months to go for with the effective date being the month of March, um, kind of really helps to look at these different lessons learned from our past exercises, and together we can look at what are the different checklists we need to go through in order to get an organization compliant. So very very important to having a clear idea of what the lessons were and how we can put it to good use in the future. So having said all of that, I think Thank you so much for the patient hearing. It was a really um, good opportunity for us to present our case and to present our findings and to share some of the best practices with you. If you have any questions, and I'm sure my friend tells me that we received a few questions already uh, from the participants, and we will take them up. But if in case time does not permit us to go through all the questions, we will just go through the top ones, uh, and we will just make sure that we answer to the rest via email, so that we don't miss out on any of these questions, and want to make really sure and uh, to the point that we have had a very good that you guys have actually had very good experience being on this webinar and have learned a few things, and I wish to learn more from your questions, and dig deeper into some of the questions and answer or appropriately frame it. So thank you so much for the patient hearing. Let us now look at the questions here. Thank you.